Eleanor Hayes sold her own apartment to help her son Ethan buy a new home. She trusted that she would live with her son in the house that her own money helped purchase. But then, the fateful call came. "Mom, we've changed the locks. You don't live with us anymore." Eleanor just smiled and said, "An interesting decision." But little did anyone know that behind that calm smile, a revenge plan was brewing. A few days later, Ethan received a letter from a lawyer and turned pale. What happened next caused the entire family to collapse. Why did a kind mother become the nightmare of her own flesh and blood? And before we continue, write in the comments from which country you're watching the video, and also check if you're subscribed to the channel, as I share interesting life stories with you every day. Okay, let's enjoy the story. Eleanor Hayes stood in the middle of her cozy, well-lived-in kitchen, taking one last look at the familiar details. The air still carried the scent of freshly baked pies, echoes of quiet conversations with her husband. This was where her son, Ethan, had grown up. Now, all of it was about to become the past. The decision to sell the apartment hadn't come easily, but the thought of helping her son outweighed every doubt. Ethan and his wife, Brittany, had long dreamed of a spacious home. A mortgage seemed overwhelming to them, and Eleanor, as a loving mother, decided to lend a hand. "Mom, are you sure?" Ethan, tall and a bit slouched, with a guilty look in his eyes, stood in the doorway. He'd always been so kind, yet a little indecisive. Eleanor knew life wasn't easy for him and his wife, but she wanted to believe her contribution would kickstart their happy family life. "Of course I'm sure, sweetie," Eleanor replied, trying to sound cheerful. "What do I need such a big apartment for, all by myself? You two need the space, especially since you're planning for kids." Ethan stepped forward and hugged her. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." Eleanor smiled, feeling the warmth of his embrace. She'd always put her son's interests above her own. That was her life's creed. After her husband's death, Ethan had become her only support and the meaning of her existence. The deal went through quickly. Eleanor handed the money from the apartment sale to Ethan and Brittany. They added their savings, and soon they found the perfect place, a spacious 3-bedroom apartment in a new neighborhood. Eleanor insisted that her share be officially documented. "It's the right thing to do, Ethan. These are my funds." Brittany grimaced, but stayed silent. The move was chaotic. Eleanor tried not to get in the way, unpacking her things in the room they'd assigned her, offering help around the house. At first, everything seemed fine. Brittany wasn't particularly warm, but she was polite. Eleanor cooked meals, kept the house clean, created comfort. She genuinely hoped her presence would ease the young family's life. But tension began to build over time. Brittany grew more irritable, her nitpicking more frequent. "Eleanor, how many times do I have to tell you, don't touch my things? Why did you buy these groceries? I was planning something completely different. We need our freedom. We're young, and you're always home." Eleanor tried to ignore it, chalking it up to Brittany's fatigue and the challenges of young family life. She kept caring for the home, cooking, washing, ironing, hoping her efforts would be appreciated. But Brittany seemed only more annoyed. One day, Eleanor overheard a snippet of conversation between Ethan and Brittany coming from their room. "I can't take it anymore," Brittany yelled. "She's suffocating me with her presence. This is our apartment, not hers." "Come on, Brittany, calm down." Ethan tried to object. "She's my mom. She's helping us." "Helping? She's just controlling every step we take. You have to choose, me or your mom." Eleanor froze, pressing against the wall. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Had she really become a burden to her own son? Had her love and care been seen as intrusive and controlling? That evening, Eleanor didn't sleep a wink. She recalled her life, her love for Ethan, her sacrifices. Had it all been in vain? Had she made a mistake in deciding to help her son? After that, she decided to visit her old friend Clara for the weekend. They hadn't seen each other in years, but they'd once been inseparable. Eleanor dialed her number.
"Clara, it's Eleanor! Remember me? Ellie? Oh my God, it's been ages!"
"How are you? What's wrong?" Clara's voice brimmed with genuine joy. Eleanor briefly explained her situation. Clara listened without interrupting. "Ellie, come over right away. My place isn't fancy, but there's room. We need to talk it all out. Cry together if we have to. I'm waiting for you. Eleanor felt a lump in her throat. Clara, a true friend, she hadn't abandoned her in need. After Eleanor's departure, Brittany stood by the window, drumming her fingers on the glass. Rain pounded monotonously on the sill, matching her irritated mood. You have to decide, Ethan, she hissed without turning to her husband. It's either me or your mom in this apartment. I need my personal space. I feel like I'm in a communal dump. Ethan sat on the couch, slumping as if under an unbearable weight. He knew this moment would come. Brittany had been weaving her web for a long time, subtly but persistently pushing Eleanor out of their lives. He loved his mother, but he feared Brittany feared her anger, her grudges, her silent contempt that cut deeper than any words. Brittany, how can I say that to Mom? She sold her apartment for us, he muttered, avoiding her gaze. Brittany spun around sharply. Impatience flashed in her eyes. For us? Or to control every move we make? Wake up, Ethan. I can't do this anymore. I need you on my side. Now. She didn't finish, but the meaning was clear. Or I'm leaving. Ethan flinched. He couldn't imagine life without Brittany. She was his heir, his son, his weakness. Eleanor had always seemed strong and self-sufficient to him. She'd manage. He stood up, feeling betrayal wash over him like an icy wave from head to toe. I'll call her, he forced out, heading to the other room. Dialing his mother's number, Ethan's fingers trembled. He pictured her face kind, a bit tired, but always smiling for him. What would he say? How could he explain this nightmare? Eleanor answered right away. Ethan, hello, dear. How are things? How's Brittany? Her voice was warm and caring. Ethan hesitated. For several long seconds, he was silent, gathering his courage. Mom, there's something. We've decided. He stumbled, unable to say the words. What happened, Ethan? Speak plainly. Don't drag it out. Worry crept into Eleanor's voice. We've changed the locks, Mom. You don't live with us anymore, Ethan blurted out, as if cutting off his own tongue. Silence hung on the other end. Ethan held his breath, expecting an explosion, hysterics, reproaches. But nothing came, just Eleanor's quiet, calm voice. An interesting decision. And that was it. She didn't ask questions, didn't beg, didn't cry, just stated the fact. Ethan felt even worse. If she'd yelled, it might have been easier, but this calm, it terrified him. Mom, forgive me, please. I'll explain everything later, he mumbled, feeling like the lowest scoundrel. No need to explain, Ethan. I understand everything. Goodbye. Eleanor replied and hung up. Ethan stood thunderstruck, phone in hand. He heard Brittany saying something from the other room, but the words didn't register. One thought pounded in his head. What have I done? Eleanor set the phone on the table. Her heart raced wildly in her chest, like a bird battering its cage. Betrayal. The word burned her tongue like hot iron. Her own son had thrown her out of the house, erased her from his life. She'd been at Clara's for 2 days already. They reminisced about the past, drank tea, laughed and cried. Clara supported her, instilled confidence. And most importantly, she advised seeing a good lawyer. Ellie, you need to protect your rights. You invested money in that apartment. You have a share. Don't let them walk all over you, Clara urged. Eleanor hesitated at first. She didn't want scandals, courts, disputes. But then she remembered Ethan's words. We've changed the locks. And something inside her broke. She wouldn't let herself be humiliated anymore. That evening of the second day, Eleanor called Robert, the lawyer Clara recommended. He was known for his integrity and professionalism. Robert listened to Eleanor attentively. His calm, confident voice inspired hope.
Eleanor, I understand your situation. You have every ground to defend your rights.
We'll draft a claim, demand either compensation for your share or the sale of the apartment. Don't worry, I'll do everything possible to help you. After talking to Robert, Eleanor felt much better. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a plan. She had support. She would start acting. That same evening, Ethan, tormented by guilt, tried calling his mother, but she didn't answer. He sent a message. Mom, I want to explain everything. Please call back. No response. Ethan couldn't find peace. He knew he'd made a huge mistake. He'd betrayed his closest person. For what? For Brittany. But even her presence brought no relief. He felt empty and miserable. Brittany, seeing his state, grew even more irritated. "Why are you moping around like that? What did she say to you?" she probed. Ethan stayed silent. He couldn't tell her about his feelings. He feared her reaction. He feared she'd leave him. 2 days later, as the sun lazily dipped behind the neighboring rooftops, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, staring absently out the window. He was waiting for Brittany, who'd stayed late at work. An uneasy, gnawing anxiety settled in his stomach. He knew he'd acted despicably toward his mother, but he silenced his conscience, convincing himself it was for the best. The doorbell rang like a gunshot. Ethan jumped and went to open it. A mail carrier stood there with an official envelope. "Ethan Carter?" he asked, handing it over. Ethan nodded and signed for it. Closing the door, he eyed the envelope warily. Sender: legal consultation of Robert Klein. His heart pounded wildly. He slowly opened it and pulled out the folded paper. The first lines made him pale. Notification of property rights violation and demand for compensation. In dry legal language, the facts were laid out. Eleanor Hayes, as owner of a share in the apartment at the address, had been unlawfully denied residence rights. It demanded either granting Eleanor unrestricted access or paying compensation equal to the market value of her share. Failure to comply would lead to court. Ethan reread the letter several times, disbelieving his eyes. He'd always seen his mother as soft, incapable of such decisive action. But now, staring at the official document, he realized he'd underestimated her. Eleanor wasn't backing down. Brittany entered the apartment, tossing her bag on the floor. "What's wrong?" "You're so pale," she asked, looking at Ethan with concern. He silently handed her the letter. Brittany scanned the text, her face lengthening. "What does this mean?" she hissed, crumpling the paper in her hand. "Is she suing us?" "Looks like it," Ethan muttered, feeling the ground slip away. "But where did she get the money for a lawyer?" Brittany paced the room, clearly agitated. "I don't know," Ethan replied. "Maybe a friend helped. This is the last thing we needed." Brittany stopped and glared at Ethan reproachfully. "I told you she'd be trouble. You should have insisted she give up her share." Ethan felt anger boiling inside. "You should have insisted," he snapped back. "You started all this. And you didn't know what you were getting into?" Brittany countered. "Or did you think I'd live under the same roof with your mommy forever?" They started shouting at each other, blaming one another for the mess. For the first time in ages, Ethan dared to argue with Brittany. He realized she'd always manipulated him, using his weakness and desire to please. And now, with the situation spiraling out of control, she was shifting all the blame onto him. "We can't pay her that amount," Brittany said, calming a bit. "Where would we get that kind of money?" Ethan was silent. He knew she was right. All their funds had gone into renovations and furnishings. "So, we'll have to sell the apartment," he said quietly. Brittany froze, struck dumb. "Sell the apartment? Have you lost your mind?" "We just finished the remodel, bought new furniture." "What else can we do?" Ethan spread his hands. "Mom won't back off. She's serious." For the first time, Ethan understood that Eleanor had foreseen everything. She wasn't a naive old lady to be easily fooled. She was a wise woman who knew her rights and could stand up for herself. And he, her son, had created this situation with his own hands, forcing her to defend herself. Several days passed in tense negotiations. Ethan tried to persuade his mother to compromise, offering a smaller sum, promising to cover her moving costs. But Eleanor remained unyielding. She demanded full value for her share, not a penny less. "Ethan, I know it's hard for you right now," she said during one phone call, "but you backed yourself into this corner. You betrayed me, threw me out on the street. I can't just forgive that." Her voice held not anger, but sadness and disappointment. And that hurt Ethan even more. He knew he'd caused her immense pain and now had to face the consequences. Brittany, seeing her plans crumble, grew increasingly hysterical. She constantly berated Ethan for his weakness and inability to fix things. She even tried blackmailing him, threatening to go to her parents. But Ethan no longer fell for her manipulations. He was tired of the constant pressure and control. He realized he'd been living not his own life, but the one Brittany had imposed on him. The family made the decision like a court verdict, final and unappealable. The apartment had to be sold. There was no other way. The sum Eleanor demanded as compensation for her share proved too much for Ethan and Brittany. Panic settled into their once cozy nest, growing more tangible each day. Brittany, used to control and power, now paced the apartment like a caged animal, unleashing her fury on Ethan. "This is all because of you, because of your mommy," she screamed. Her voice rang with rage. "You should have stopped her. You should have done something." Ethan stayed silent, head bowed. He no longer saw in Brittany the confident, strong woman he'd once admired. Now she was just a frightened, bitter fury, ready to tear apart anyone in her path. And he understood he'd become one of her victims. The apartment sale took several weeks. Every listing, every call from a potential buyer, every viewing became a torturous reminder of their mistake. Brittany clung to hope that someone would offer more, that they'd scrape by, that Eleanor would relent and drop her demands. But no miracle came. Eleanor, in contrast, remained composed and detached. She didn't call Ethan, didn't try to meet. Robert, her lawyer, kept her updated, but she merely nodded as if observing from afar. Her eyes held no resentment or anger anymore, just quiet sorrow and a new expression unfamiliar to Ethan, one of inner strength and independence. Finally, a buyer appeared. The deal closed swiftly, without hitches. The money was divided according to ownership shares. Brittany packed her things and left for her parents in another city without saying goodbye to Ethan. She discarded him like an unwanted item once she realized he could no longer provide the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. Ethan was left alone in the empty apartment, which had recently seemed the pinnacle of happiness and prosperity. Now, it crushed him with its emptiness and silence. He wandered the rooms, touching the walls, as if trying to hold on to the slipping past. Fragments of conversations echoed in his head, Brittany's words full of reproaches and demands, his mother's quiet voice full of love and care, and he realized he'd lost both. One due to his weakness and cowardice, the other due to his greed and stupidity. He sat on the couch, closed his eyes, and felt tears streaming down his cheeks. These were tears of despair, regret, and realization of his own worthlessness. He'd betrayed his closest person, succumbed to a selfish woman's influence, and ended up with nothing. Eleanor Hayes, receiving her share from the sale, immediately began searching for new housing. Robert helped her select options that met her needs. A small but cozy apartment in a good neighborhood with good infrastructure and near a park. She wanted a quiet place to enjoy nature and fresh air. After several viewings, she chose a modest one-bedroom on the top floor of a new building. The windows offered a stunning view of the city and river. The apartment was bright and spacious, with high ceilings and large windows. She felt at home right away. The purchase and paperwork went smoothly. Robert handled all legal matters, sparing Eleanor unnecessary stress and worry. He'd become not just a reliable lawyer, but a loyal friend, always ready to support her. In her new apartment, Eleanor felt free and independent. She chose the furniture herself, decided on the curtains, created her own comfort. She no longer depended on anyone, managing her life and money on her own terms. One evening, with all the settling in done, Eleanor sat on the balcony, sipping tea and watching the sunset. The city at her feet seemed beautiful and serene. She felt happy and at peace. For the first time in ages, she truly felt at home. That's when the phone rang. It was Ethan. Eleanor picked up but said nothing. She waited for him to speak first. "Mom, it's me." Ethan's voice sounded dull and uncertain. I wanted to apologize." Eleanor stayed silent. She knew this call would come eventually. She'd waited for it but didn't know what to say. "I know I made a mistake. A huge one," Ethan continued. "I was blind. I didn't listen to you. I gave in to Brittany's influence. I'm so sorry." Eleanor sighed. She felt Ethan's pain, his remorse. She knew he was struggling deeply, but she couldn't just forgive him. He'd caused too much hurt and betrayal. "I don't know what to say, Ethan," she finally replied. "You hurt me so much. You betrayed me. You threw me out of the house. That can't just be forgotten." "I know, Mom, I know." Ethan's voice trembled. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just want you to know I realize my mistake. I understand how badly I hurt you. I'm ready to do anything to make it right." Eleanor paused. She gazed at the sunset, the city, her new apartment. She thought about her life, her mistakes, her hopes, and she realized she didn't want to live in resentment and anger. She wanted to forgive and move on. "All right, Ethan," she said at last. "I'm willing to forgive you, but that doesn't mean things will go back to how they were. You have to understand, you'll need to earn my trust. You'll have to prove you've really changed." "I understand, Mom. I understand." Ethan's voice brightened with relief and joy. "I'll do everything I can. I'll try every day to regain your trust. I want to be the son you could be proud of." Eleanor smiled. She believed Ethan could change. She believed in his sincerity and remorse. She knew it wouldn't be easy for him, but she was ready to give him a chance. "All right, Ethan," she repeated. "I'll be waiting." She hung up and looked at the sunset again. The city glowed with lights, as if welcoming her new life. She felt strong and independent. She knew the future was in her hands. That evening, Eleanor Hayes fell asleep peacefully and serenely. She knew everything would be all right. She'd found herself. She'd become a mature woman who knew what she wanted from life, and she was ready to pursue her goals, no matter the challenges or obstacles. Ethan, left alone in his rented apartment, stared out the window at the night city. He felt lost and lonely. Brittany was no longer there to tell him what to do. He had to make decisions himself and take responsibility for them. He knew a long, hard path to redemption lay ahead. He had to prove to his mother that he'd truly changed, that he'd become a different person. He had to earn her forgiveness and reclaim her trust. Ethan knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was prepared for any trials. He wanted to get his mother back, to restore his family. He wanted to become the son she could be proud of. All right, thanks for listening.